Good afternoon, my friends. It's great to see you all again. Great to be able to worship with you on this day. And I'm especially excited because I absolutely love the passages that we used in church this past Sunday, and I'm excited to bring them forward into this week's video. So without any further delay, I'd like to start with Psalm number 15. O Lord, who may abide in your tent? Who may dwell on your holy hill? Those who walk blamelessly, and do what is right, and speak the truth from their heart, who do not slander with the tongue, and do no evil to their friends, nor take up reproach against their neighbors, in whose eyes the wicked are despised, but who honor those who fear the Lord, who stand by their oath even to their hurt, who do not lend money at interest, and do not take a bribe against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be moved. Our next reading will come from one of the most famous passages from the Book of the 12, sometimes referred to as the Minor Prophets. This is the book of Micah, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. Hear what the Lord says. Rise, plead your case before the nations. Let the hills hear your voice. Hear, you mountains, the controversy of the Lord, and you enduring the foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a controversy with his people, and he will contend with Israel. O my people, what have I done to you? In what have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. O my people, remember now what King Balak of Moab devised, what Balaam son of Beor answered him, and what happened from Shittim to Gilgal, that you may know the saving acts of the Lord. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? I'd like to turn next to the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 1, verses 18 through 31. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since, in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided, through the foolishness of our proclamation, to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs, and Greeks desire wisdom. But we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strength. Consider your own call, brothers and sisters. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing the things that are, so that no one might boast in the presence of God. He is the source of your life in Christ Jesus, who became for us the wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, in order that, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. And our final reading for today, our gospel reading, will come from Matthew's Gospel, one of the most famous passages in the New Testament. This is the account of Jesus giving the Sermon on the Mount, beginning with the Beatitudes. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you, when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same ways they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Thus ends the reading of God's Word. Thanks be to God. There are times in which I prepare to give a sermon at the church, and before I walk into worship, I am fairly certain of what I'm going to talk about. There are times where I walk in with absolutely no idea what I'm going to talk about. And there are times where I think it's going to be the first case. I think I know what I'm going to talk about. And yet, once it becomes time for the sermon, something else takes hold, and there is an idea that really appeals to me in that moment, and I can't help but talk about it. As I was walking into our sanctuary this past Sunday, I was convinced that I was going to talk about the Beatitudes. I love the Beatitudes. I love the fact that Jesus isolates these individuals who seem to have not been given a fair shake in life. Those who mourn, those who weep, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. And Jesus issues a blessing. It plays well, it speaks to my soul, and it restores my confidence in the world. And yet, when I began the sermon, something about Micah had gotten lodged in my head, and especially Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? And I couldn't get away from that idea, and I ended up preaching exclusively on Micah. And so now, because I have this particular opportunity through this format, I'd like to speak today on the subject of the Beatitudes. Now, I think it's fairly reasonable to say that when things go especially well for us, we don't need to be reminded that we are a blessed people. We have the evidence right at hand. As we see our families all about us, as we spend blessed moments, holy moments, and wondrous moments with those people that make our hearts rise and sing, as we see new birth, as we experience the absolute beauty of creation all about us, it's not so hard to be reminded that we are a blessed people. However, there are also times in which it might be difficult to identify those blessings. Jesus spoke out to a group of people who may very easily have believed that they had no blessing. Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who have a hard time having faith, those who have been battered down, those who have been taught that nothing good can ever happen for them. And Jesus says, "Blessed are you, for yours is the kingdom of heaven." Blessed are those who mourn. I think every one of us has probably had the significant unhappiness of losing someone who was dear to us. Whether it be a parent, whether it be a sibling, whether it be a good friend, most all of us will have had that happen in our lives, and we have had to deal with that sense of loss, the loss of life, but also the loss of direction, the loss of emotion, all of those things that seem to get ripped out of us before the pale specter of death. And Jesus said to those who are mourning, those who are beneath that shadow, those who don't know what the future is going to be like, those who can't even believe that there will be a future, blessed are you, for you will be comforted. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are the powerless. Blessed are the voiceless. Blessed are those who have no influence. In all of those times and at all of those places in which people believe, I'm just simply not important enough. I am a little person living a little life. I am a simple person living a simple life. I have nothing to offer. I have nothing for which anyone should take note of me. Blessed are you, for you will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. There may be times in our lives where we feel like righteousness is a dream that has escaped us. If we hunger and thirst after something, that means we are not satiated. If I have just sat down and I had a wonderful 4, 5, 7-course meal, I no longer hunger and thirst. I have been filled. My appetites have been sated, and there will be time before I am concerned about it again. If I feel that righteousness is at my side and at my behest, if I feel like all good things happen to me, if I feel like I am treated as I deserve to be treated, and that the people around me also are treated as such, I don't hunger and thirst for righteousness. This beatitude was given for those who only see the unrighteous flourishing, who only see the power that is granted to the rich, the corrupt, and the manipulative. Those who believe that no good deed goes unpunished, and those who believe that nice guys finish last. For all of those who hold these beliefs, for all of these who believe that the idea of righteousness is notably absent in our world, Jesus says to them, "Blessed are you, for you will be filled. You will know righteousness. You will be treated to the banquet at which you will see the full righteousness of God." Blessed are the merciful. Those who are more interested in the betterment of those around them, those who are more interested in seeing all of us provided for, cared for, and loved, than exalting their own position. Those who are willing and able to climb down off a pedestal in order that they may stand shoulder to shoulder. They don't accrue power, they don't accrue wealth. And yet for them who make such sacrifices, Jesus again says, "Blessed are you, for you will receive mercy." Blessed are the pure in heart, those who will not take advantage of others, those who will not stoop to unscrupulous methods, those who truly believe, and those who hold fast to their convictions. Blessed are you, for you will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, not the instigators, not those who go prepared for battle, not those who go prepared to lay low anyone who believes otherwise, not those who are prepared to stand and go blow for blow with those who disagree with their ideas, with their states, with their lives, but the peacemakers. Blessed are you, for you will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, those who truly experience no good deed going unpunished, those who go and they try their hardest and they give to their utmost, and yet somehow for all of their efforts and for all of their intentions, bad things happen to them. They are made to be suspect, they are whispered about. Blessed are they, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then finally, the last beatitude. Blessed are you. Again, Jesus is sitting down specifically with his disciples, teaching them. The assembled crowds just down the mount may have heard this message, but I believe that this was specifically geared towards the disciples because these last two Beatitudes have moved away from the blessed are the or blessed are those and have now become blessed are you. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Now we have to pay attention to that qualifying word, falsely. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you. Well, the disciples, they attracted a lot of publicity. Some of it positive, some of it negative. There were people who said of Jesus and of those who followed him that they were all possessed of the devil. There were people who said of Jesus and of those who followed him that they did not respect the commandments. There were people who said of Jesus and of those who followed him that they were blasphemers. All of this was false evil. However, there were times in which the disciples faltered, in which the disciples fell, in which the disciples did things that were not proper. In fact, at one point, James and John asked Jesus if they should call down thunder and fire upon people who were not being as kind as they could be. This, had Jesus allowed it, would have been evil. This would have been a source of destruction. This would have been improper escalation based on what had happened. The disciples were only human. At one point, the disciples noted that there was an individual who was casting out demons and appeared to have some success with the endeavor. But he was casting out demons and he was not following Christ. He lived where he lived and he worked where he worked. He had not abandoned all of his possessions and left his life behind in order to follow Christ. And so the disciples came to Jesus and they said, "Should we forbid him to do so?" And Jesus said, "Whoever is not against us is for us." The man had set himself up as an opponent of evil. He had set himself up as opposition to the forces of the demons that were plaguing the people of the region. And the disciples were prepared to stop him, by force if necessary, from doing something that was wondrous, good, and necessary. Had the disciples been granted permission by Jesus to stop this man from healing those who were afflicted, that would have been an evil. And so Jesus says, "Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account." Again, we have another qualifier. It's not just somebody says Simon Peter cheats at cards. It's not just that somebody says that Judas is a bad listener. It's not just that somebody says that Matthew has a little bit too much greed in his life. This needs to be on the account of Jesus, for the work that they had done, for the good that they were prepared to do, for the call that they had received. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Now, I'd like to take just a moment to emphasize a fact. And that fact is that oftentimes when we are turned on by other people, whether they be people we know or whether they be complete strangers, we don't feel good about it. We don't like it when our families talk down about us. We don't like when our friends don't believe in us. We don't like when complete strangers criticize us. And in almost every one of these situations in which Jesus describes, the individuals whom Jesus was describing were looked down on. The poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers. Oftentimes, these people are looked at as being weak. Oftentimes, it seems that these people don't have substance to them. I have seen individuals who have been lost in a wave of despair at a funeral service or immediately surrounding a funeral service, just before or just after. And people will ridicule them, saying that they are weak, saying that they need to just get over it, they need to be strong, saying that they need to recognize that all people die and that this is not a special case. Sometimes we ridicule the peacemakers. In the United States of America, we were founded on war. The Revolutionary War gave us our identity. And in the few hundred years that we have lived as a nation, we have been involved in many, many wars and many, many conflicts. War is one thing that we are very, very good at. And so, when we have the option of either showing our demonstration through martial might or engaging in peace talks, it seems to be the displays of overwhelming power that make people the proudest of who we are, that reassure people that we are a power in the world stage. And yet the peace talks seem almost weak. We make concessions, we sign treaties, we provide allowances. And yet, it's not the warriors, it's not the combatants, it's not those who have the biggest guns that Jesus praises and that Jesus offers a blessing to. It's those who might otherwise be looked down on, those who might otherwise be considered to be weak or ineffectual, those who don't truly stand up for the country. Likewise, the pure in heart, those who trust and those who love unashamedly, unreservedly, and unabashedly. We tend to think of them as naive, Pollyanna. We tend to think of them as those who don't have enough common sense to truly live or to truly thrive. Those who hunger and thirst for righteousness without the systems at their back that provide that righteousness, we may look at them as those who are always destined to fail. We may look at them as those who haven't made the right alliances. We may look at them as those who don't have the right people in their corner. The meek. This is one that I personally reflect on because as I was growing up, I was a very meek young man. In fact, if somebody were to even stop on the street of my hometown and say hello to me, I would turn bright red and I would stammer and I didn't know how to respond. I was embarrassed at the slightest bit of attention that was paid to me. I was meek. I didn't seek out attention. I didn't desire attention. I know what it is to fear attention. And I know that in those times I knew that there was something different about me. Something that I could change if I could. The idea that I couldn't even hold a real, fulfilling conversation with people outside of my family or one or two close friends always made me think that I was defective. I was a meek young man, and I didn't feel blessed. I have lost those who were very, very dear to me, whether they be in my direct family or whether they be in my wider friend group or my church family. And in the time in which I sat down at a funeral service, in those times in which I got that phone call, I didn't feel blessed. In those times in which I have not felt the Spirit move in me, in those times in which I found faith hard to come by, in those times in which I wondered to myself, is God even there? And if God is there, does God care about me? I did not feel blessed. In those times in which I have gone out of my way to show mercy to others, in those times in which I have sacrificed of myself, in which I have given of myself, in which I have let others shine, in which I have seen a situation in which I had to take a step back and let somebody else be the main player, I didn't feel blessed. Jesus is speaking to a group of people who oftentimes do not feel blessed. They feel that by their very nature, that they are not the recipient of great blessings, or perhaps that they do not have blessings at all. And Jesus sought to remind those people that even in those times, perhaps especially in those times, blessed are you. There's a famous poem that exists. It's called the Footprints poem, and I'm sure that we all have heard some variation of it. An individual looks back on the paths that their life have led, which seem to be along a sandy shore. And as they looked at this path, they could identify where they were during their earthly, corporeal life. And they saw that in the times in which they suffered the most, in the times in which they felt the most alone, in those times in which they felt that they had no blessings, there was only one single set of footsteps. And so they questioned God, they questioned Jesus, they said, why is it that when I needed you the most, you abandoned me? Why is it that you forced me to walk alone? Why is it that you were with me when I didn't truly need you, but in those moments in which I was the most in need, you were nowhere to be found? And with infinite grace, with infinite patience, and with infinite love, God, Christ, they turn to this beleaguered individual, this person who believes that they have been misused, this person who believes that they have been maltreated. And they said, during those times in which you were the most in need, during those times in which all strength seemed to fail you, during those times in which all friends seemed to abandon you, during those times in which you were so desperate, those were the moments where you could not walk on your own. And so then I carried you. The footsteps of God, the footsteps of Christ, are the only consistent ones in our lives, because there are going to come times in which you and I are going to feel like we cannot go on. We don't have the strength, and we don't have the reserves. We don't have the resources that we need. We don't have the people at our backs. And yet, God walks on. Sometimes walking beside us, telling stories to help the journey go faster, sometimes lifting us up and carrying us on through those days in which we feel like we are bereft of the blessings. Jesus spoke the Beatitudes for you and I so that we might recognize, some 1,000 years after Jesus spoke them, that even in the times in which we are the most desperate, even in the times in which we are the most lonely, and even in the times in which we cannot identify those blessings, blessed are you. Things will change, and oftentimes that is the greatest blessing that we can ask for. Knowing that the difficult times, the harsh words, the hurt feelings, and the broken relationships are not our eternity. They're not our future. Blessed are you, because things will change. You will receive mercy. You will be filled. You will inherit the earth. You will see a greater time in which all will be well. Thank you all, my friends. It is my hope and prayer today and always that you are surrounded by blessings, and that you are completely cognizant of those blessings, that you realize each and every one of them, that all of your days are filled with absolute glory. And yet, failing that, in those days that will come, in which we wonder where the blessings are, in which we wonder why we only see one set of footsteps, in which we wonder why life, the universe, and everything have turned their backs on us. I hope that these words echo in your ears. Blessed are you. The times will change. Your feelings will change. There is still a hope to be found. There is still a light to follow. Blessed are you. Thank you so much, my friends. It's a delight, as always, to be here with you, to speak these words and to begin to explore what they might mean right now and forever. And so, my friends, I wish you all a wonderful week, and I look forward to talking to you again. God bless you all. Goodbye.